Is it realistic to expect any real change from Arizona football and its defense this coming year, even with a new defensive coordinator?
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke, locked on your team every day. All right, we got a lot to get through this show. We are going to talk Arizona football. We are going to talk about the Arizona football defense and everything that does entail. Now, the first thing that we obviously need to talk about here is, and again, we're going to talk about this, is let's talk a little bit about Danny Gonzales. Now, he takes over for Dwayne Aquina at the DC position. I like Dwayne Aquina a great deal. I think Dwayne Aquina is probably the best defensive backs coach in college football history. And if he's not, I think he's right there. And I think that he did a fairly decent job last year. Now, again, you could look at some of the play calling and say, well, you know what exactly was going on there? There were some issues for sure. Like, you look at it, they had a terrible job. They had a terrible time containing the run. That was obviously an issue. So that was not something that was easy to watch. They had a hard time getting to the quarterback. But at the same time, I also look at it, and I don't think that there was a ton of talent there. So it's hard for me to sit here and say, Dwayne Aquina should have done this or Dwayne Aquina should have done that. I don't really look at it from that perspective because, again, I just don't think that he had a lot to work with there. But either way, he's out. He's going to be the defensive backs coach at the University of Texas. And I think that he is probably going to do quite well for himself. I think that's very easy to. I think it's very easy to say and look at and say that. Okay, now what does that mean then for Arizona? Then Danny Gonzales is in charge. Now Danny Gonzales might not have like maybe the resume as somebody like a Dwayne Aquina when it comes to some of the players that he's coached. Like I said, you look at Dwayne Aquina coaching Chris McAllister, coaching Michael Huff, Aaron Ross. I mean, this is a guy that has put so many guys into the NFL. Believe that he's got 3 Thorpe Award winners, if I'm not mistaken, and he's also got another one, and the one that is probably his best player is Chris McAllister, who didn't win the Thorpe Award. So there's obviously that. But Gonzales comes in, and he's got a pretty good track record when it comes to calling plays. You look at it, if you talk with any ASU people, they generally have good things to say about Danny Gonzales and about how he goes about doing things. Again, he runs kind of a 3-3-5 or a variation of the 3-3-5, and he's done pretty good. He's done pretty good work with it. He is a guy that like I said, He's got a system. He knows what he wants to do, and I think there's something to be said for that. So that's obviously something that you got to really keep in mind there. Now, the other thing too that I think you look at is where exactly then is he going as far as this talent goes? What is he going to try to scheme up? And I don't really know what the answer. I don't really know what the answer to that one is as far as scheming, what he's going to do. That's going to be fascinating to watch and see how that plays because. Like I said, I hate to keep bringing this up, there's not a ton of talent on that defensive side of the football. Now, there are some guys. We're going to get to some of those players here shortly. There are some guys for sure. But by and large, not exactly a murderer's row, so to speak, of great talent. So, there's obviously that. So, let's kind of talk position by position first, and the one that I want to talk with first, we're going to go a little bit backwards here, is we're going to talk about the defensive backs. I think this is a pretty good unit. Now, again, I'm not going to sit here and say that this is a great unit or anything like that, but I think it's a pretty good unit for Arizona. Now, listen, you've got with Genesis Smith, you've got a guy who is 6'3", 220 pounds. He could play about anywhere, I think. Now, is he going to start? I don't know. But he feels like an NFL-type talent. Again, he's big, he's rangy, he's fast. And the other thing, too, he's got a knack for the ball. And that is something, too, that you either have or you don't. I mean, how many times – look at Tacario Davis. Tacario Davis would be in the NFL right now if he could catch the football, but he can't catch the football. So, what is it then? But that's obviously something with Takario that he couldn't do. Genesis Smith can catch the football. He can track the football. He can catch the football. He is going to be the linchpin that back there on the on the back end of the of the defensive backs. Excuse me. He is and if he's in the NFL in a year, I don't think that would surprise anybody in the least. He's like I said, he's got next level talent to him, and he's big, he's rangy, he's fast. He just kind of looks like what an NFL safety looks like. Then the other one, Dalton Johnson. Dalton Johnson is just Mr. Steady Eddie. I like Dalton Johnson a great deal. When I watch Dalton Johnson's one of those guys you don't really notice until he's not out on the field, if that makes any sense. He is when Jed Fish put him in there, he stabilized everything, and he stabilized everything very quickly. Again, he's always in the right spot at the right time, and he's just kind of able to just kind of make plays the right way. He is like I said, I don't know that he's going to play in the NFL, although I could see it. I wouldn't be totally shocked if he played in the NFL, but he's also, it's going to take the right system. It's going to take the right fit for him to be able to get to that point, but I don't know that he can't get to that point. But I think it's a fairly solid safety combination. I really do. I look at Genesis Smith and I look at Dalton Johnson, and I think, those guys are more than good enough to win some football games with. So, like I said, we'll see how that plays out. But I like what they have to offer, and I think right now, that's just kind of what you're looking at. What do you have? What can you bring to the table for Arizona? And I think both those young men can bring quite a bit to the table. So, like I said, you got something there that I think is pretty. You got something there that I think is pretty intriguing. Now, the corners are very fascinating for me. I think the corners are solid as well. Listen. You got Marquise Groves Killebrew. I like him a lot. He was kind of in and out of the lineup a lot, in and out of the lineup last year. But, again, he's big, he's physical, and I'm glad that Arizona got him back. That, to me, felt like an odd situation when he was going to Nebraska, because Nebraska, I think they just kind of have better players. But he's here. He's going to be that number one, or he's going to be at least one of the boundary corners, and I like him. Again, he's big, he's physical, and he has a toughness. He can find the ball, he can track the ball, and those are the kind of guys that you want. You want guys that, when you put him out there on the football field, you know what you can get out of him. He can match up with bigger dudes as well. He's, like I said, he's a good football player, and I feel pretty comfortable with him at one of those corner spots. Now, he had some tough moments last year, obviously. That BYU game was tough where he's back there and he kind of jumps to get out of the way, and it led to a touchdown. That's something that you can't obviously have happen. So that's one guy. Then the other spot, you have a Javion Cole. I like Javion Cole. Listen, he was very good at San Jose State. He went to Texas and didn't play much. That doesn't really mean much to me because Texas, again, might have been the most talented team in the entire country last year. I mean, they were, and if they weren't, they were certainly on the short list. It was a very, very good team. And, just because he doesn't play there doesn't mean anything to me. It's kind of like the situation with what's his name? Big Bill Norton. Just because Big Bill Norton doesn't play at Georgia doesn't mean that Big Bill Norton can't play at the University of Arizona and be an impact player. I mean, heck, he went to Texas and he became an impact player as well. So, but I like Javion Cole a lot. I think that he is he's good for Arizona, and I think that he allows Arizona to kind of settle things down a little bit to where you feel kind of good about things. Now, the next guy that we have to talk about a little bit here is and just kind of where everything is, then it's Trayden Stukes. I think you could make the case that Trayden Stukes is the best defensive back on the entire roster. Just as far as pure playing, he got hurt last year, but he's back. He's ready to go. He's tough. He's physical. And like I said, what you see is what you get with Stukes. Dwayne Aquina said many times, and Dwayne Aquina is not a BS artist. And he said that when I look at it, this is a guy that with Dwayne Aquina, this is a guy who this is a guy that's really good. And when it comes to Traden Stukes, he can play, he can get physical, he can get into the backfield. Like I said, I like the secondary. I think the secondary is good. I don't think they lost a ton because, quite frankly, last year Takario Davis wasn't very good. And the problem with Takario is he can't catch the football, and I think we're just going to keep coming back to that. And when you can't catch the football, I mean, when you're put in a good situation, you have got to be able to catch the football, and he just wasn't able to do that. And I think that was always going to be a little bit of a detriment. He's off to Seattle right now. We will see. We will see how it plays out. But like I said, I'm not overly heartbroken by him leaving. That's a guy that, you watch him and you're just kind of like, all right, well, he should be good. He should be better. But for whatever reason, you're really not that good. And I think it's just something that, like I said, it's just kind of an interesting spot. So we shall, like I said, we shall see. Now, the linebackers, though, this is where you start getting into some questions. The linebackers are fascinating, but there is one guy that I think we know what we can get. But first, FanDuel, my friends, FanDuel, check it out. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you are all about baseball under the lights or the high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game. Your friends are while they're getting sunburned at the beach, make a little bit of money in the process. All right, here's the deal, though. your money's good, and you can bet in-game. You can bet before the game. You can bet futures. Your money's good. So, new to FanDuel, new customers can put just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's simple, that easy. Get a little free money out of it. Open the FanDuel app or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Again, with FanDuel, too. Again, that's everybody uses it, and there's a reason everybody uses it. It's fun, and you know that your money is good. There's no haggling. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about where we are with the linebacking situation. Now, that to me is going to be interesting. First of all, you got Taye Brown. Taye Brown was really, really good last year for Arizona. Was he great? No, but I think that he contributed in a way that I don't know that a lot of people necessarily thought he could. And besides just that, he just looked comfortable out there. And that's one of those things that I think that you want to see when you're looking at somebody like a Taye Brown is, where are you? Do you look like you're comfortable out there? Do you look like it? Does it look like you belong? All of that stuff. And he did. He's big. He's physical. That was another really good find by Jed Fish. He wasn't somebody that was thought of incredibly high, but he was somebody that was thought of highly enough. And, like I said, that was something that was good. Watching him, though, I think he can take another step. And I think, Danny Gonzales has talked about that he does have a lot of talent right there. Not only does he have a lot of talent, he's also somebody that, you watch him and you're like, okay, what's that next step for you then? And I think there's something to be said for that he can make. There's another step that he can make. So Taye Brown, really, really good football player, and I think you're going to see it even more. And I think that you want to see him emerge if you're Arizona. The other one then that you want to look at is Riley Wilson. Riley Wilson is, like I said, really, really good. He is, and I think Arizona is going to be using him in a multitude of different settings. They're going to be using him as a pass rusher. They're going to be using him as as a guy that can stuff the run. But I look for him to kind of be all over the place. He's older, obviously, and I think the coaching staff likes what they've seen from him. And I think Danny Gonzales likes a lot about what he brings to the table and what he can, what they can really do with him. So, like I said, I watch him, and I think that that's a guy that. He can really impress. Now, you lost Jacob Manu, obviously. The thing that you got to remember about Jacob Manu, and I love Jacob Manu, is that last year Jacob Manu was not good. And I think a big reason why is because Jacob Manu was out of shape. I think that was something that was a little bit disappointing for a lot of people because, you come back here and you're like, man, the one thing you got to be is in shape. I remember looking at media day and he looked kind of fat. He looked a little overweight. And for somebody that, relies on quickness and certainly isn't the tall instinct, that was something that you couldn't really have. So there is, like I said, there's obviously that's spot of part of it. So I don't know that that's really a loss, and I'm saying he did some really good things here. I just don't know that that's a loss. Then the next one, Chase Kennedy. I think you're going to see him at linebacker a lot. Chase Kennedy can get after the quarterback. That's one thing that I think we know about Chase Kennedy. The problem though with Chase Kennedy is again he's also about 208 pounds, or whatever the case may be. He's not a big dude. Not only is he not a big dude, he's a guy that when you kind of look at him, you're like, all right, well, that's going to be a little bit of an issue there. So you've obviously got that, but the linebacking core, I'm not terribly unimpressed with. I think that, like I said, you return everybody. Manu wasn't good last year, so I think that having maybe Danny Gonzales in that defensive coordinator spot, because obviously the linebackers were not good last year, the special teams were not good, but putting Gonzales in that spot, I think that that can really kind of change some things. So we shall see. Now at the defensive line, that's where I'm worried, but I think there's seems to be a quiet confidence about this group amongst the people that would know, amongst the people that are certainly smarter than me. And the quiet confidence, I think the quiet confidence stems from a number of different aspects. But the first is you've got Trey Smith. Trey Smith is solid. I think the one thing about Trey Smith last year is he wasn't coached well. Joe Salave'a was not a good coach, and I think when Joe Salave'a came in, the first thing he said was, well, we got to get you to start using your hands better and to start using your hands. And I think Trey Smith or somebody's like, well, I've never been coached that before. And when Joe Salave'a has been your D-line coach the whole time, that's an issue. You remember watching Samalo, too, when they were asked him, what his motto was, and he just said, get it. There was nothing about Samalo that, I don't think that anybody thought was, particularly impressive. So, like I said, there's so we shall see. But I think Trey Smith is a solid football player. I don't see any reason why he can't put in something like why he can't have 6 or 7 sacks this year. As a matter of fact, I think he is going to have 6 or 7 sacks. I think he's going to be a pretty good football player here for the Cats. And I watch it, and I watch him, and like I said, I think that he'll be able to take a next step. Obviously, lining up opposite him is going to be Dominic Lalesio. Dominic Lalesio is another one that the coaching staff's always liked. The coaching staff's always liked him. He's one of those guys. He's tall, he's angular, and he's got kind of he's got a little bit of a different build to him. But, like I said, you see him and, he looks the part. He's not overly big, but he's also kind of quick twitch. So he's one that's kind of exciting to watch, just kind of see how he does play out. But Lalesio, not a bad football player. And like I said, we'll see how that does. I would also imagine you're going to see Chase Kennedy from time to time in the box. I think with Chase Kennedy, he is like I said, he's light. But he also has shown a little bit of an ability to get after the quarterback. So there's that. Now, the defensive line, it's interesting. Now, Taye Brown is back. He went to Texas, and unlike Big Bill Norton, he was not able to play really there. So he's back. And I think Arizona is more about his speed. You watch him, and he's good. He's a good football player, and I think for Arizona, he'll be your best defensive tackle. And I don't really see any reason why he can't be somebody that gets you, 3-4 sacks, and he's on as long as he's on the field. I think he's going to be pretty darn good for Arizona. So there's, like I said, there's that. And then Deshaun McKnight. Transfer, he's really turned a lot of heads. Deshaun McKnight he's done a lot of really good work. We'll see. You hear about these guys in camp and about what people think about him, and then it doesn't really materialize. So we will see how it plays. But like I said, the defensive line very much worries me. It doesn't worry me nearly as much as the offensive line. So I'm going to say that. So there is, like I said, there's clearly that. So, all right, now we're going to talk about what the expectations should be for this team, and what exactly you need from that defensive side of the football. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. Locked on your team every day. All right, now, what should expectations be for the U of A defense? All right, here we're going back to the just don't suck. If you're like 9th in the Big 12, I'll take it. I can't have you be 16th, though. Last year there were some games where you're like, it looks like you're improving a little bit, and then they would go right back to getting smacked around. You got Gonzales in there now. He's an experienced play caller, so you shouldn't really have that as an excuse. So like I said, we're going to see. But if the defense can be like 9th in the conference, something like that, then I think that Arizona, you got to feel pretty good about that. Because I think you're really banking that offense is going to be good. And if that offense is good, then Arizona should be decent. But it's got to be a bend but don't break defense. And you look at it, and there were some games last year where they did that, and then there were other games, too, where they were just totally manhandled. I think of the game against Central Florida, where Central Florida's playing their fourth-string quarterback, and they're just absolutely dominating Arizona. I think it was like 56-7 or, whatever the case may be. It wasn't good. So Arizona's got to figure that out, and Arizona's got to be able to show that, it can play well in those spots. So we're going to find out. I don't think the defense will be as bad as it was last year. I don't know why I'm really basing that. I think probably a little bit of it is that, Danny Gonzales has more of a track record of being a DC. He's done a fairly good job at other places he's been. And when you talk to people about him, they generally say that, they were happy with the job that he did. So, you got that going for you. Brent Brennan obviously is going to hang his hat on it. Like I said, in that 3-3-5, the one thing, though, is that a lot of people talked about, especially ASU fans, is you don't want to get beat up. You don't want to get killed off those quick little slants, and that's something that I think seemed to have happened a lot. Seemed to happen a lot during the ASU tenure. So you got to be able to focus on that. But like I said, if you could finish like 8th or 9th, I think that's good because at the end of the day, this is still going to have to be an offense that I think carries things because, we talked about it before. You got Noah back. You got a lot of skill guys that can play, and I don't see really any reason why Arizona can't, I don't see why their offense can't be good. Now, is it going to be great? I don't know. But I don't see any reason why it can't be a top 6-7 offense in the Big 12. And I think the goal for Arizona just has to be this. Get to a bowl game by any means necessary. You win 5 games, you win 6 games, that's an improvement. Last year, you won 4 games, but it felt like you won -4 games. So you got to be able to get to that point. You get to that point, then I think you're in fairly decent shape. And I think that probably gets you Brent Brennan year 3. I think if Arizona gets to a bowl, you say, okay, well, and depending on how it looks, you could say, all right, well, we're probably looking at a year 3 here. And you're also, let's be honest, and, I love being in the Big 12, but you're also, this is not a football conference where you're like, man, I have no clue how Arizona is going to be able to win games. There's a lot of winnable games on that slate. So, take that for what it's worth. So the other thing that I also find fascinating about this, though, is, Brent Brennan is basically putting all money in. He's saying that, Seth Deggy is going to be my guy that's going to be the offense. And he's saying, I know Danny Gonzales was the linebacker coach, but he's going to be the DC, and we are going to get through this, and we are going to make, and we're going to make the best of this situation. So, like I said, that is a big, big part of all of this. But like I said, expectations, like I said, I think that 5.5 wins is the Vegas line. And I think that's about right. If you get to 6, I think it's probably a success. You go bowling, you get a little bit of extra work. You get somebody like an Oscar Rios coming in. You get some more players, and you can continue to build on that. And then you go from there, and you see what it's all about. So now, tomorrow, though, our next show, we are going to talk about Big 12 Media Day. We're going to talk about everything, the comings and goings. Deion Sanders showed up, and he didn't really answer any questions, but Deion says that he's going to be good to go. I think Kansas State's the best team in the conference. I know ASU's right there as well, but I do think that Kansas State's the better team. There's going to be, like I said, there's going to be a lot to follow here when it comes to the Big 12. Obviously, it's a basketball conference, but the football isn't terrible. And Brett Yormark says that he thinks that you should be able to get multiple teams into the college football playoffs. And looking at it, I don't know why that isn't the case either. Because sure, maybe at the top end it's not great, but I think those, the team that wins and the second team, I think those are going to be every bit as good as some of those like fifth or fourth SEC teams. So, like I said, we shall see. But as always, very much appreciate you all making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. Bear down, back the A, and thanks for making this your first listen of the day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.